ဒီနေ့နိဗ္ဗာန်အကြောင်းကိုမညဘုညာနဲ့မျက်မှောက်ပြုတဲ့အထိဆက်လက်ပြီးတော့ဟောဖို့ပါပဲဒါပေမဲ့လို့အခုခိုက်တာမှာတော့နိဗ္ဗာန်ဟာတကယ်ရှိတဲ့တရားပါဆိုတာလောကီတာရကယုတ်တိနဲ့ယုတ်တိပိဋကနီးနဲ့ဖော်ပြယူလောက်မြလုံလောက်သွားပါပြီနောက်ပိုင်းကျမှမညာဘုညာနဲ့နိဗ္ဗာန်မျက်မှောက်ပြုပုံလေးတွေဆက်ပြီးတော့ဟောပါမယ်ဒီတော့ဘာဟောမလဲဆိုတော့ဒီကပထမဇန်အကြောင်းဟောခဲ့တာဒုတိယဇန်ဆက်ပြီးတော့ဟောဖို့ပါပဲဒါပေမဲ့လို့ခုစကားဟာအချိန်တဝက်ကျော်သွားပါပြီတချို့ယောဂီများဉာဏ်မြင်လေးတွေအားနည်းနေတာရှိတော့လိုအပ်တဲ့အကြောင်းအရာလေးတွေတည်နာလည်ပြီးတော့သွားလို့ရှိရင်တရားတွေတိုးတက်ဖို့မျှော်မြင်မိတာနဲ့ဟိုလိုဒီနေ့ဣန္ဒြေထက်ကြောင်းကိုပါဟောပါမယ်
Today's talk should actually be a continuation of last night's discussion on Nibbana. Should be a continuation of the subject of Nibbana in relation to the noble path and fruition consciousness. However, Sayadaw feels that the talks over the last 2 evenings should be quite sufficient in terms of demonstrating to the audience here through reasoning and through analogies the fact that Nibbana actually exists and it is not a mere poet's dream, not a mere notion, but a real thing. The talk on Nibbana also was given at a time when a discussion on the second jhana was supposed to have taken place. Again, instead of continuing the subject of the second jhana, Sayadaw would like to talk about something quite different tonight. This is on account of the fact that we are more than halfway through the retreat now, and there are some yogis here who are still struggling, and Sayadaw is thinking of their progress. He feels that there is not much time left, but there still is some time for yogis to bug up, and therefore he is thinking of giving a talk on the factors that will conduce to the sharpening of the controlling faculties of mind.
Vipassanaတရားအထုတ်တယ်ဆိုတာအမှန်ကတော့မိမိရဲ့နောက်ဖြစ်မဲ့စိတ်အစဉ်မှာတတ္တဝိရိယတတိသမာဓိပညာခေါ်တဲ့ဒီတရားတွေကြီးစိုးနိုင်စွာရှိနေလောက်တဲ့အထိဣန္ဒြိယတတ္တိဣန္ဒြိယကိစ္စတတ်အောင်လို့လုပ်ပေးတဲ့သဘောမျိုးပါပဲဆိုလိုတာကတော့တတ္တတရားတွေထူးထူးခြားခြားထက်သန်အားကောင်းလာပြီးတော့ဆွေးမြဲသွားအောင်ဝိရိယတတ္တိလည်းပဲပို့ပြီးတော့ခိုင်မြဲအောင်တတိတွေလည်းပဲဆွဲမြဲဖြစ်အောင်စိတ်ဆူဆီးမှုသမာဓိတွေလည်းပဲမြဲခိုင်ပြီးတော့နောက်ဆုံးအသိပညာတွေထက်မြက်ဖြစ်အောင်လို့လုပ်တဲ့သဘောပါပဲ အဲ့ဒါလိုလုပ်ရမှာအကြောင်းမဲ့မဟုတ်ပါဘူးအကြောင်းနဲ့ပါပဲအဲ့ဒီကြီးစိုးနိုင်တဲ့တတ္တာဆရှိတဲ့တရားတွေထက်တာအားကောင်းရှင်းလင်းပြသလာဖို့ရာအကြောင်း၉ချက်ရှိတယ်တဲ့
Vipassana meditation can be seen as a process whereby one endeavors to develop certain mental factors, certain states of mind, so that they become controlling faculties. And these are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. The development of these mental states is aimed towards a situation whereby faith, for example, will be strengthened and made durable. Virya, or effort, is slowly developed to reach its peak and culminating energy, the third element of effort, which we discussed before. It is also aimed at the sharpening of penetrative mindfulness, the deepening of concentration, and the unfolding of more and more profound levels of insight. But this development of such mental qualities cannot occur without appropriate causes. The controlling faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom cannot attain that state of control if they are not properly developed according to their respective causative factors.
အဲ့ဒီအကြောင်းကိုမျိုးတွေကပထမဆုံးအကြောင်းကတော့ဥပ္ပန္နုပါဏာနံသံခါရဏသံခါရဏံခယမေဝပစ္စတိဓဝါ၆ပါးကအကြောင်းအလျော်စွာဖြစ်တိုင်းကုန်သောရှုခွင့်ရှုခွက်ယုံနာအာယုံတို့ဟာပြည့်သွားတာကြီးပဲတဲ့အဲ့ဒီအပြည့်မြင်အောင်ရှိရတယ်မပြည့်ခင်ကလည်းပဲဒီတရားတွေဟာပြည့်သွားတဲ့တရားတွေကြီးပဲလို့ခံယူချက်ရှိထားယုံကြည်ထားတယ်နောက်တကယ်ရှုလို့အပြည့်တွေတွေ့လို့ရှိရင်ထောက်ခံချက်ပေးတဲ့အနေနဲ့ပေါ့လေယုံကြည်ချက်လည်းကြားရတယ်ကိုကမပြတ်တဲ့ဘက်ကခုခံကာဝယ်ပြီးအကြောင်းနေရှာပြီးတော့ခုခံကာဝယ်မနေရဘူးလို့ဆိုလိုတယ်အဲ့ဒါပထမဆုံးဣန္ဒြေထက်ချင်းအကြောင်းပါပဲ
There are 9 factors that will conduce to the development of the above mentioned controlling faculties. The first of these is the observation of whatever that arises as a dissolving process. Now this practically means that one should approach one's observation of all mind and matter as they arise at any of the six sense doors, with the idea that whatever arises will pass away. This attitude is very important. It is like a preliminary sort of acceptance of the way things are. You accept that things, whatever that has arisen, will fall away, will dissolve. This acceptance is very important because it will help to prevent any sort of reaction that might possibly occur if the mind has not been thus prepared. The mind may think that everything that arises may not necessarily disappear, may not necessarily dissolve. That sort of attitude would serve as a hindrance in the course of practice.
အဲ့ဒီလိုအပြည့်ကိုမြင်အောင်ရှုရမှာစက္ကိကြကရိယာရှိဖို့အရေးကြီးပါတယ်တထကြစက္ကိကြကရိယာစံပါတိတိဆိုတာယူယူတည်တည်ဖြစ်လို့ရမယ်တဲ့ယူတည်တည်ဖြစ်လို့ရမယ်ဆိုတာမိမိကိုအားထုတ်နေတဲ့တရားရဲ့အကျိုးကိုသိနာလည်ပြီးတော့ရှိဥစွာတရားပေါ်မှာတန်ဖိုးထားတဲ့စိတ်ရှိဖို့လိုပါတယ်ဒီတရားအထုတ်ခြင်းကြောင့်စိတ်စင်ကြယ်မှုကအစပေါ်ဒီအကျိုးတွေအများကြီးရတယ်ဆိုတာပေါ့ဒီဒါလေးတွေလည်းပဲထိုက်တန်သမျှဆင်ញင်ရပါတယ်အကျိုးတည်တော့ဒီပေါ်မှာတန်ဖိုးထားတဲ့စိတ်ရှိသွားရင်ယူသေးတဲ့စိတ်ဟာအလိုလိုနိုးလာတော့တာပဲသို့သောလက်တွေ့အထုတ်တဲ့အခါမှာယူသေးဖို့ကတော့လိုပါတယ်ယူသေးတယ်ဆိုတာထိုင်ထအကွေးစလှူရှားအစရှိတဲ့အမူအရာတွေပြုတိုင်းဖြည်းဖြည်းသာသာလေးလူမာလေးလိုလုပ်ရတာထားလည်းပဲဖြည်းဖြည်းသာသာထိုင်လည်းပဲဖြည်းဖြည်းသာသာဒါမှလည်းပဲဟိုကဖြစ်ပြသွားတဲ့သဘောတွေကိုအကုန်လုံးဒီကရှုမှတ်မှုနဲ့လိုက်မိတာပြုံမြင်နဲ့ထားလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ပဲမိတော့မလဲကျန်ကများမှာယူတည်တည်ဖြစ်ဖို့ဥပမာလေးတစ်ခုပေးထားပါတယ်ဒီနှခမ်းရည်နဲ့အမျှပြည့်နေတဲ့စီကွက်ကိုတဏှာမှတဏှာရွှေ့တော့မယ်အပြုတ်ဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးကင်ပါတဲ့ဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးရွှေ့ပါတဲ့တဏှာဖြင့်လည်းပဲជីဝစာတစ်ခုချလောက်တဲ့တရားကိုလျှောက်တဲ့အခါဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးလျှောက်ပါတဲ့မယုံမသေးနဲ့သွားပြီးတော့လုပ်လို့မရဘူးမယုံမသေးနဲ့စီကွက်ကိုရွှေ့မယ်ဆိုစီတွေဖိတ်သွားမှာမယုံမသေးနဲ့လျှောက်မယ်ဆိုရင်ကြောက်ထဲကျသွားမှာအဲ့ဒါလို့စီကွက်ကင်တဲ့အခါနဲ့တရားလျှောက်တဲ့အခါမျိုးမှာဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးလုပ်ရတဲ့သဘောမျိုးဒါတက္ကိစ္စကရိယာခေါ်ပါတယ်
The preliminary acceptance of the fact that all things that arise will pass away can be verified through the course of practice. It is helpful in the beginning to accept that fact, but as one's practice deepens, one will be able to see these mental and physical phenomena arise and pass away. And when one is able to see that clearly, one's preliminary belief is verified. The second factor that will conduce to the development of the controlling faculties is that of being able to carry out one's meditation very, very carefully and meticulously. one has to treat one's meditation with the utmost respect and reverence. This can occur if we reflect on the benefits that one is likely to enjoy from the practice of meditation. One can perhaps reflect on the fact that this Satipatthana meditation, if properly practiced, will lead us to the extinction of suffering, to purification. Understanding the value, the priceless value of one's task will be very helpful in creating that attitude of respect and meticulous care that is so essential in the actual practice of meditation. This, in practice, means that one should move around very carefully and meticulously, trying to be mindful. It is very obvious that when one's mindfulness is still weak and still under development, we will not be able to note our movements if they are carried out in a very quick pace. We have to slow down. We have to allow the mind to be able to pick up the activities in a gradual and slow manner. When one is sitting and there is an intention to stand up, this should be done very carefully and meticulously, following every movement, starting from your hands as you move from your posture, and all the other minute activities involved in the actual standing process from your seat. If one does that very quickly and hastily, doubtless one's mindfulness will not be able to penetrate into the true nature of what's happening from moment to moment. The scriptures illustrate this quality of care and meticulousness with two examples. There is the example of a man who is required to carry a pot full to the brim of oil. If you're asked to shift that bowl full of oil, which is filled to the very brim, from one place to another, you can imagine the degree of care that would be needed to ensure that the oil does not spill from the bowl. Another example is that of walking on a very narrow footbridge. It's like if you have to walk across a river on this very narrow, foot-wide footbridge, you'll have to be very careful. You can't just run across the bridge. There is the water right below you, and you have no railings, and you have to go step by step very carefully. You can imagine the intensity of care and meticulousness needed in such a situation. That is the same degree of mindfulness that you have to exercise in your practice.
အဲ့ဒီဥပမာတစ်ခုတည်းမှာပထမဆုံးဥပမာကဘုန်းကြီးအထင်နဲ့ပေးတဲ့ဥပမာမဟုတ်ပါဘူးမြတ်စွာဘုရားကိုယ်တိုင်ပေးခဲ့တဲ့ဥပမာပါတစ်ချိန်မှာရဟန်းတော်များတော်တဲ့တရားထုတ်နေတော့ရဟန်းတော်များဟာထိုင်တကွေးစလှူရှားစတဲ့အပြုအမူတွေပြုရင်မယုံမသိနဲ့သူတို့ပြုကြတယ်ပြုံးနဲ့ထိုင်ပြုံးနဲ့ထပြုံးနဲ့ကွေးပြုံးနဲ့စမျက်စိကလည်းပဲကြည့်ချင်ရကြည့်မယုံသေးတဲ့သဘောလေးတွေရှိနေတော့တရားကမတက်နိုင်ဘူးမယုံသေးလို့တရားကမတက်တာပဲတတ္တဝရိယတတိသမารိပညာတွေမထက်တာပဲဆိုတာမြင်တော်မူတော့မြတ်စွာဘုရားကအဲ့ဒီရဟန်းတော်တွေရှိရာကြွရောက်ပြီးတော့ဒီဥပမာလေးပေးပါတယ်ဥပမာကတော့တော်တော်ကျယ်ပြန့်ပါတယ်ဘုန်းကြီးကလူရင်းအနှစ်သာရလောက်တာကောက်ပြီးတော့ပြောရတာပါအဲ့ဒီဥပမာလေးပေးဟောလိုက်တဲ့အခါမှာရဟန်းတော်များမျက်စိအစားရှိတဲ့အိန္ဒြေလေးထိမ့်သိမ့်ပြီးတော့ထိုင်တာကွေးစလှူရှားအဆောင်ငယ်အပြုပြင်နေလူမမာလို့ဖြည်းဖြည်းသာသာလေးပြုလုပ်တဲ့အခါကျတော့တရားတွေထူးခြားကြီးတက်သွားတယ်သိကောင်းပါတယ်နောက်လို့ဘုန်းကြီးတို့ယောဂီတွေလည်းထိုင်တာကွေးစလှူရှားတွေမှာဖြည်းဖြည်းသာသာလေးဖြည်းလို့ရတာဘယ်လောက်ပဲဖြည်းဖြည်းပါလိသိကောင်းတာပဲဖြည်းလေးတရားတွေတက်လေပါဘယ်နှကောင်းပါလဲဒါမှလည်းပဲခုနကိုယ်ရဲ့ကယုံနာတရားတွေအပြည့်ကိုမြင်အောင်ကြည့်လို့ရမှာပြုံးတဲ့တိုင်ပြုံးတဲ့ကွေးအမူအရာကကြမ်းကြမ်းကြီးလုံနေတော့ပဲအပြည့်မြင်နိုင်ပါလိမ့်မယ်မြင်လည်းပဲစတိလောက်နေမှာအထင်လောက်နေမှာအမြင်တော့မရှိခဲ့တာအဲ့ဒါသိပြီးတော့သဘာဝကျပါတယ်တော့
The first example was given actually by the Buddha himself. It seems that during the time of the Buddha, there was a group of monks who were residing in the forest, ostensibly practicing meditation. But they were pretty sloppy in what they were doing, pretty sloppy in their practice. They would get up very suddenly and would not exercise any sort of restraint at all. They would look here and there and just move around very carelessly. The Buddha came to know of this situation and investigated to see how these forest monks could be assisted. He found that they were not making progress in their meditation precisely because they lacked this quality of respect and reverence for the Dhamma, for the meditation. Upon realizing this, the Buddha approached the monks and gave a sutra based on the example of the bowl of oil that was filled to the brim. It seemed that after the monks heard the talk, they were very inspired and resolved in their practice, very resolute in being very meticulous and careful with all the activities. In a short time, they were enlightened. This is something which can be verified through your own experience, to the experience of yogis. It may seem like a paradox, but the fact is that the slower and the more careful, the more meticulous you are in your movements, as you try to follow them with mindfulness, the faster you will be able to make progress.
စကိစ္စကရိယာဆိုတဲ့ဟာအသိသဘာဝကြပါတယ်။ဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့လောကမှာမြန်မြန်လှုပ်တဲ့နေရာမှာနှင်းနေသွားလို့ရှိရင်အကျိုးမရဘူးအကျိုးစီးပွားတော့ပြပြနိုင်တယ်။ဆိုကြပါစို့မော်တော်ကားတွေရှုပ်ချက်ခတ်နေတဲ့လမ်းဖြတ်တန်းကူတဲ့အခါဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးလို့ခယူသွားသလိုသွားလို့မရဘူး။ဒါကြတော့တွတ်တွတ်သွားရတယ်။ပြီးတော့ ဆေးရုံဘောကလူမာတယောက်မြန်မြန်တက်တက်ကြီးပေါ့လေကင်တွယ်လို့ရှိရင်ခဏလေးအသက်ထွက်သွားမှာဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးပေါ့လေလဲရတယ်ဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးထူရတယ်ဒါမှလူမာတက်တာရမှာဒါမှကုစားရေးမှာအောင်မြင်နိုင်တာပဲနေနေလှုပ်တဲ့နေရာမြန်မြန်သွားလို့ရှိရင်အကျိုးပြည့်စည်တယ်ဖြည်းဖြည်းလှုပ်တဲ့နေရာဖြည်းဖြည်းပဲလှုပ်ရမှာပဲဒါမှအကျိုးရှိပါတယ်အခုတရားထုတဲ့ယောဂီတွေဟာဆေးရုံဘောကလူမာတွေသဘောထားပြီးတော့ဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးပေါ့လေဒါမှလှုပ်ရတယ်တော့
This example given by the Buddha is very befitting and appropriate. In this world, there are certain things that we have to do very quickly. Imagine you are in a highway and you are required to drive at a certain speed. If you drive along cruising at snail's pace, you will be causing a lot of trouble. If you do that in town, in the city, you'll be responsible for causing a traffic jam. And it may even endanger your life in other circumstances. So in such a situation, one has to adapt to circumstances. It is a situation that requires brisk and a fast pace. On the other hand, if we were to apply the same principle to patients in a hospital, then you can see how destructive the results will turn out to be. As you know, patients who are warded in a hospital have to be taken care of very, very gently and carefully. If you hurry them along and try to finish your work very quickly, and they would suffer. And in no time at all, you will find that all your patients land up in the mortuary. Similarly, in the practice of meditation, one must remember that we are trying to develop this quality of mindfulness. And mindfulness at its infant stage would be unable to keep up with the pace of activities done very quickly and briskly. We have to understand the circumstances, understand the situation, appreciate the fact that we are still at a very infant stage with regards to the depth of our mindfulness. We have to act like patients who are sick and moving around very slowly and sickly, so that our infant mindfulness may be able to catch up with what is happening.
Yogi mya akakate dilo khyu twa da lo phie phie lo ya ma la so do kakate no ma hok pa bu tat tatတရားထုတဲ့အချိန်မှာဆိုရင်တော့ဖြည့်နေတယ်များဖြည့်ဖို့ပါအများနဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့ကိစ္စမှာဆိုရင်တော့မှန်တမ်းလောက်ဆိုရင်တော်ပါပြီဆိုကြပါစို့အစားအသောက်စီသွားတဲ့အခါပြီးတော့ရေမိုးချိုးတဲ့အခါမျက်နှာတိတ်တဲ့အခါပြီးတော့ဆရာကြီးထံသွားပြီးတော့တရားစိတ်ခံတဲ့အခါအဲ့လိုမျိုးကြတော့မှန်တမ်းလောက်ဆိုတော်ပါပြီဉာဏ်တဲ့အချိန်ဆိုဖြည်းဖြည်းလေးပေါ့ဒီလိုပါလေ
One may ask, if slowness is required, then are we to move around like snails throughout the whole day? Well, not necessarily so. We have to be a bit more practical because we are living in a community. This is a community environment. And the Sayadaw would like to suggest that yogis should try to be as slow and as mindful as possible during their private times. But in activities which involve other people, then you should try to be as mindful as possible as you move around at normal pace. Such activities include going for your meals, which means lining up and taking your food and so forth. But when you actually sit down and eat, you can eat as slow as you want to. This also includes taking a shower, having a bath. There are limited bathrooms available, so you have to be considerate. Thirdly, this also includes coming for your interview sessions. There are people who are waiting, and it would be good if you could come at normal speed.
Tatiya Janga Satija Kriya Sambadi Satija Kriya Sara Amiema Pia Telesabodi, Tamane Tamasatawari Tiny Donka Ma Hong Bebuga Sapore Ayung Malasia Tayama Taro, a few Malatajin Secretary Savio Let the Kuji Shuidari, Tautari, Tara, go no kissing no Kabilo Father. Mama Yade Kama Lebe Wesa, Pinaga Asa, now Bama Abu Mashida Usoye. Mama Yaga Nivido, Tuaro me Abu Chiro Sika Vido, Twajin Security, Clanjin Security Savido, Dosho. A colo pissing in Nauko, Kabilo, Telesa Shumata, Kilita, Wungomia Shumata, Era Tatisa Kriya Kovare.
Persevering continuity of mindfulness is also a very essential factor that contributes to the development of the controlling faculties. Continuity in mindfulness means that one should try to be with the moment as much as possible without a break, without any breaks in between. This is to ensure that the momentum of your mindfulness is kept going, is developed, is growing, and also to ensure that the kilesas do not have a chance to infiltrate through your defense of mindfulness. This means that you have to be really very careful and meticulous in your movements so that continuity can be maintained. When you finish sitting and you are intending to get up from a sitting posture, you should do so with the utmost care, doing things one at a time. Lifting your hand from your knees, from your lap, and putting it on the side, and the other hand, the other arm, and leaning your weight on your arms as you try to get up from your seat, and so forth. All the minute activities involved in that process of standing should be noted in a continuous stream, with an unbroken stream of mindfulness. This applies also to your walking meditation. As you stand and you intend to lift your right foot, and you should try to be mindful from the very start of that lifting process, right through the middle until the end. From the start of the pushing, following very, very closely and continuously until the end of the pushing. And from the placing, starting from the very point that you lower your foot towards the ground. And as you place your foot on the ground,
လူရင်းချုပ်ကတော့အိပ်ပျော်နေတဲ့အချိန်ကလွဲရင်ကျန်တဲ့အချိန်တွေမှာသွားနေတော့ရနေတော့ထိုင်နေတော့အေးရပေါ်လှဲတော့ရိယပူကြည်လေးမျိုးမှာရောကိုယ်တော့ဆန်တော့စောင်းတော့ငယ်တော့မြတ်တော်ခတ်တာမျိုးလုံးပိတ်တာဖွင့်တာကအစပေါ့လေပေါ်သမျှဟာတွေအကုန်လုံးဒလစက်ကိုလိုက်ပြီးတော့မှတ်နေရမှာအဲ့ဒါတတိစကရိယာခေါ်ရတယ်ရနာခြင်းမရှိရဘူးငေးမနေရဘူးတွေးမနေရဘူးမှိုင်းမနေရဘူးဒါလစက်သွားနေရတာ
In a nutshell, this means that apart from your sleeping hours, apart from the prescribed number of hours for sleeping, you should try to be awake. You should try to be continuously mindful throughout your waking hours. Not only with respect to the main postures of sitting, standing, walking and lying, but also including the minor postures, the minor movements of the body, like bending and stretching, closing the door, wiping your face, closing your eyelids, blinking, turning, and so forth. All these activities, no matter how small or minute they may appear to be, should be made the object of mindfulness, made the object of continuous mindfulness without any break at all.
ကျန်ကများမှာတော့မိကျမပေါ်ခင်ကထင်းကြောင်တစ်ခုနဲ့တစ်ခုပေါ်လေပုတ်ပြီးတော့မိလောက်ရတယ်မိမှုရတယ်ထင်းကြောင်တစ်ခုနဲ့တစ်ခုပုတ်တဲ့အခါမှာပူလီတွေအားစိုက်ပုတ်ရလေလေပဲမိထွက်မှာမိဖြစ်လာမှာပဲနားရတော့တာပဲမိဖြစ်ဖြစ်ရတော့ဒီလိုပဲပုတ်နေရတာပဲမိမထွက်ခင်နားလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ပုတ်လို့ပူးနေတဲ့ဟာပြန်ပြန်အေးသွားတယ်တခါထပ်ပုတ်လိုက်ခါနားလိုက်ဆိုတော့မိရမဖြစ်ဘူးမိဖြစ်တော့မိကိစ္စမမြောက်ဘူးပေါ့အဲ့ဒီကျန်ကများမှာဥပမာလေးရိုးရိုးပေးထားပါတယ်
In fact, this continuity of mindfulness should be carried out such that there is no time at all for reflection, no time for hesitation, no time to think about what your experiences are and how they relate to what you have read about. No reflections, no reasoning, no thinking, just to apply this bare awareness from moment to moment to moment to moment without break. The scriptures again give us a useful example. In the days of old, before the invention of matches or magnifying glasses, fire had to be started by very primitive means. You take two sticks together and you start rubbing. And you rub and rub and rub. They have an instrument, it's like a bow, and you sort of drill, you rub your hands, or rather you hold the stick in between your palms, and you roll it against a sort of a motor, a sort of motor-like thing, where you have some dried leaves. And you keep on rubbing until there is sufficient friction, until the friction gets hot enough for a spark to ignite. Now in that process, it's very interesting to note that one has to be continuous. Imagine rubbing it for 10 seconds and then taking a 5-minute rest, and rubbing it for another minute and taking another 10 seconds rest. You know, you'll never get the fire started. Every time you take a rest, the momentum or the heat that is generated will start to lose its heat, and the momentum will never be strong enough for a spark to ignite the leaves. So you can see that the key to starting the fire lies in unbroken continuity.
အဲ့ဒါလို့အမြဲမပြတ်တလစလောက်ရမယ်အစားကြားတယ်မှာငေးနေမယ်တွေးနေမယ်မှိုင်နေမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့အဲ့ဒီယောဂီကိုကျင့်ကံများမှာဥပမာပေးထားတယ်ပုတ်တင်ညူဥပမာနဲ့ပေးထားတယ်ပုတ်တင်ညူများဟာသူရဲ့မိဖက်ကိုပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်အစာကိုပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်ခလန်းလန်းတွေးလိုက်လို့ရှိပြက်နဲ့လာတော့တာတကြနားနေလိုက်စက်တက်မသွားဘူးသူကငေးလိုက်လူတွေခေါင်းညိတ်ပြလိုက်တကြတတိယသွားလိုက်နားနေလိုက်ပေါ့လေသူရောက်လို့တဲ့စီကိုသွားတဲ့အခါမျိုးမှာဒလစမဟုတ်၄-၅တောက်လောက်နားပြီးမှငေးပြီးမှတွေးပြီးမှတော့ရောက်တယ်တခါတလေသူအစားအလှမ်းမီလေးပဲအဲ့ဒီအလှမ်းမီလေးတော့မှငေးနေလိုက်သေးတယ်နောက်မှအေးဆေးဖြစ်ပြီးမှထိုးပြီးတော့ဟတ်လိုက်တာပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီလိုလုပ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီလိုယောဂီမျိုးကိုတော့ပုတ်တင်ယောဂီလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်
The scriptures again give us a very interesting example to illustrate broken continuity. There's an example of a chameleon. I wonder if any of you have studied the behavior of a chameleon. Chameleon is a very interesting animal. When it catches sight of a mate from a distance, or suddenly discovers some delicious food at some distance, it will suddenly rush towards its object, but not at once. It will scurry along and then stop and gaze into the air, stare and tilt his head and look here and look there and sometimes just stare into the sky. And he will take another spurt and he will stop again to gaze into the sky. And then he will start off again and spurt off again and stop again. It never reaches its destination at one go. It spurts forward and stops for a while, gazing, spurts forward and stops for another while, staring, stops forward and spurts forward and stops again, this time tilting its head this way and there. Or a yogi who practices in a similar fashion, being mindful for a stretch and then starting to daydream, mindful for another stretch and then starting to reflect, mindful for another stretch and then starting to think of this and that, and so forth. Such a yogi is a chameleon yogi.
Di thana ma daအဲ့ဒီပုတ်တင်ယောဂီတော့ရှိမယ်တော့မထင်ပါဘူးဒါပေမဲ့တခုတော့ရှိပါတယ်တချို့အတွေးဝါသနာပါတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေတွေးနေတာပင်မပါတယ်ဆိုပြီးတော့နာနေနေတာအေးလေးပန်းပါတယ်ဆိုပြီးတော့အိယာပေါ်သွားပြီးတော့ပက်လက်လာပြီးတော့အနာယူတာအဲ့ဒါလို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ပုတ်တင်ယောဂီဖြစ်သွားတာပါပဲအဲ့ဒီပုတ်တင်ယောဂီအဖြစ်မခံမှုအတွက်ကတော့လိုအပ်ပါတယ်
Others are things that we are unlikely to find any chameleon yogis around here. But there are some people, some yogis, who have a very strong tendency to reflect and think. Every new experience that they have will be cause for them to start reflecting. Oh, where am I now? At which stage have I arrived? Or people will start to think about other things. I feel so tired today. Maybe I didn't have enough sleep. Maybe I ate too much. If I could just take a little nap, then I'm sure I can improve my mindfulness tremendously. And we start to think and reflect. consider the pros and cons of sleeping. Or you could, when you're watching pain and the pain starts to give you a little bit of trouble, you look at it and it increases in intensity, gets stronger, and oh dear, my feet are really hurting. Wonder if it will, turn into a sore. It will affect my whole meditation. I won't be able to practice for this whole 3 months. Maybe I just better, shift it a little bit. And so forth, a yogi who is prone to all these little stops is very much like a chameleon yogi.
Weပြောခဲ့တဲ့အကြောင်းတွေထဲမှာအိန္ဒိယထဲအကြောင်း9ပါးထဲမှာဆိုရင်ဖြစ်တဲ့ယုံနာတွေအပြည့်ကိုမြင်အောင်ရှုရမှာတက္ကိစ္စကရိယာနဲ့တတိစ္စကရိယာဒီအင်္ဂါနှစ်ချက်လုံလောက်ရင်ယောဂီမှာအများကြီးတိုးတက်ဖို့ရရှိပါတယ်
In the endeavor to be mindful of mental and physical phenomena as they arise within us, so that one can see very clearly they are passing away, see very clearly how they dissolve. It is very important to have these second and third factors that will conduce to the development of the controlling faculties. If there is care and meticulousness in one's practice, there is a slowing down in movement, great respect for what you're doing. If there is also unbroken and persistent continuity in practice, the yogi can indeed go a very long way.
Yodide Pubira Pore Aune Diashumate Saint Leve Anita Mao Pira Zeta Leve Tatisakria and Inevoli Tamanetama Sessa Ao Shumaba Mialushi Niuranadiari Kimbira Sadia Tujaja Gila Dila Ome Tehopala Tenia Java Lazara Lekanlare, Tadadiali, the man, Nakoa, Doni Yaga, Nimidagu Tellara. Tuja the volley, Duila, Sika Leve, Atela, Tobido, Atuchinla. Atuchinla, Tobido Leve, Grusaila, oh, really Kaunare. Pobido, Jonia Sailaro, Tatia Leve, Pobido, Swemilare. The deep was Swamela, she only was secretly a sugar cycle cacresera. Say a Susimu, the Mari Lady, a leve to do charge up Pilare. Now, a dinner lady Pitore Kaja and 2 years yam shiv. Yunani Dila Ha de Hopala, Jojuri Dila Lucia, de Oda, de Mana Vesera, Tadadiari Pilara. Yunani, I'm yesing at the Wabesura Dila Lucia, Mera take money. Sierra take money to what I do Chita Manesra. 2 options. Jaclebo, Jaclebia. Willia Via Yamelomia Yaudavi solution. Oh, Yantetala, Tadadiari, 2 chapilla. We take on the reader to the Marita take on. Era Bafilo, I never seen a tale. You did Malu. Chitapia de Harley, the less money. Dilu 2 chapilla resra. The gay Jews as a to the yogi imitation.
With the application of these 2 factors, care and being meticulous in one's movements, as well as unbroken and persistent continuity, the hindrances will soon be removed. They will be put at a very safe distance. And very naturally, when the hindrances are at bay, the mind becomes very calm and clear. There is a calmness and tranquility of mind that you may not have experienced before. And when you really experience it, you may be filled with awe if it's your first experience. Fantastic, it's really true. All those guys are talking about calm and tranquility, and I'm really experiencing it. It's wonderful. So that is a sort of preliminary verified faith. Faith has arisen, faith that it is possible, that is actually true. You've experienced it for yourself. There's no denying it. There's no kidding. With faith, very naturally, one becomes inspired. Oh, this is just the beginning, if I put in more effort, I will certainly be able to experience something much better than this. Very naturally, there is a surge of energy. And this will lead, of course, to the deepening of one's mindfulness. If energy is there, effort is there, making sure that the mind hits this target of observation at each moment, then mindfulness will be able to penetrate into its object of observation. There is a strengthening and deepening of mindfulness. Mindfulness becomes more durable. It's consolidated. Again, mindfulness has this uncanny ability to also bring about one-pointedness of mind. With mindfulness being able to penetrate into each object of observation, the mind is able to stay in there, stay put without being distracted, without being scattered, without being dissipated. So you see again that very naturally concentration becomes well established and strong. The stronger mindfulness is, the stronger concentration will become. Lastly, wisdom needs no special introduction. And all these controlling faculties of faith, of effort, mindfulness, and concentration are well developed, wisdom will unfold of itself. One begins to see very clearly, intuitively, how mind and matter are separate entities, how they are quite different. And we begin also to understand in a very special way how they are connected through this mechanism of cause and effect. And especially when we are able to see the characteristics of impermanence, of suffering, and of non-selfness, we are filled by this great faith. A person who has attained the insight into arising and passing away is especially filled with this faith, this verified faith, because the yogi will be able to see objects arising and passing away from moment to moment, whether it's mind or matter. And when one is able to see that, again, it can be very fulfilling. One can exclaim, it's fantastic, I'm seeing anicca, everything is really coming and going away. It's really, there's no self in there, I can't find anyone. It's just moments after moments of these phenomena with no space in between, one after another, just going on according to their own laws. There's no one there, no one at home. It becomes a great relief, a great discovery that will fill you with a lot of faith.
Di Takisakriya and Tatisakriya, di Nemu Ponsa Viro. That way the Umali Shimyaluchi, Poviro Shimara. Don't need that way the car. Chow don't want my Patmazo, the Toago, and the time out hard. And the time of my man, a pota in the Lucia. Da Temala, the time out Tabu, Patmazo, the Yichiva. Talube Pine Ayunga Asa Shumate Yogi Bogo, our body, our Nidia Shumate Sine, Chinda Gai body. Quinjap here. And I take his Sakaria Kore. It are body Ayulady go Malota Madaga Bane to less Ragona 2 need an etude. Jetain had a 2 need a 7 pia 2 need a etude. Yale bore ayo sema pia khare mani da iro da twa le be chau tung wa le ani tha le ma mi set dai le be put dai pi bi so lo shi yin tung ni de taphong ha ta phie phie pa bi do naut da ha shat phit la thet la de ma da lo be bore ayo ne shuma de sin ne le be ani tha ma tet ni be set dai le be mani mana put dai pi me so yin sait ti tan shin bi do Yamini level point la Tadadi level 2 jaja telada. Uriatri the Mari, Dari level 2 jaja telada. I did the bomb you.
What do you call a stone for sharpening a knife?
Which
stone? The text again give us an example to illustrate these two factors of meticulousness in practice and unbroken, persistent continuity. It is the example of sharpening a knife on a whetstone. First, you have to understand, or you have to know, that when you sharpen a knife, the blade has to be held at a certain angle, not too sharp and not too low. It must be held at just the right angle, and you must just put in the right amount of force onto the blade. And the other thing is that you have to move the blade up and down on the whetstone. And this sharpening of that knife on the whetstone has to be done continuously. You have to do it continuously so that eventually one side is sharpened, and then you turn over to the other side, and you slant it in the right position, and then you move it again. Keep on sharpening it. But it has to be done continuously. Now the slanting of the blade is analogous to being meticulous in your practice, doing your practice with care and respect, doing it properly. The actual sharpening of the blade and moving the knife up and down is analogous to persistent and unbroken continuity of mindfulness. So if these two factors are really present in your practice, you can be rest assured that in a short time you will make fantastic progress in your practice. Your faith and effort, your mindfulness, concentration and your insights will become strong and durable and will deepen.
Chính cha tao bảo đi, cha này chết đi đó, nông đi cha mà phải sẽ bị đó hậu quả. Ní tôi cha bảo sao?
Time has caught up again with us, so Sayadaw will continue the rest of the factors tomorrow.